Hello and welcome to the Management Matters podcast by the University of Liverpool Management School. I'm Hazel Kennedy, and in this episode we have two great guests who are exploring the topic of gender and marketing. Lindsey Moore is founder of Agnes Marketing, a marketing agency offering B2B professional business services. Lindsey is also chair of the not-for-profit Liverpool Ladies Network, as well as host of her own In Conversation with SMEs podcast. Dr. Daniela Pirani is Senior Lecturer in Marketing here at the Management School. Her teaching focuses on integrated marketing communications for our master's programmes, and her research interest is around consumer culture, gender and sustainability. So let's begin.
Hi Lindsey, lovely meeting you.
And it's lovely to be here. Thanks
How
for
are
inviting
you?
me. I'm good, thanks Daniela. Yeah, you well?
I'm well.
Good.
So we're here today to talk about gender and marketing, gender in marketing. And just a quick start, how did you get into this? How did you get into marketing?
I have always been fascinated how people act and buy and what influences their decisions in general. And I did a business degree at university, and you got to try lots of modules relating to everything from finance through to marketing, and it was just it felt like it was just made for me. So I sort of went in and specialised in that area and really followed my interests in that area. And then after university, started my career working in for cosmetics companies in the marketing department, and now I've gone full circle and now work with small businesses in professional services, which are mainly male dominated. So I feel like I've seen the whole range of customer preferences and how people buy different things. So yeah.
Yeah, I got into the marketing world from consumer, a bit like you, I guess, from the consumer side. And I started thinking about gender because I studied food and family. And there was loads to say about how family is done and the different gender roles for food, right?
Yeah.
Nothing radically new. We kind of know how things are. But it got me thinking loads around how brands are using gender stereotypes and stereotyping, and how much advertising at the time I was really thinking about advertising representation are shaping how we think of gender and gender roles. And that's how basically I got hooked into the topic. And I'm still very curious because I feel maybe as you said, the field has changed so much as well, right? Gender fluidity and woke washing. There are new terms that are coming up and we need to be aware of. So it's quite
It is quite it's a very interesting topic to discuss this, because it sort of probably goes to the heart of communication and marketing, isn't it? Which is basically for brands or businesses trying to create a space where their audience feel like they belong and where they feel like their identity is represented. And like you say, there's so much change, I think really positive change going on around gender fluidity and more awareness and of how people choose to be to identify or not. But I do feel that there's a lag in our everybody's sort of almost sometimes conscious but almost subconscious attitude towards like beauty that I started getting in my career was women equaled beauty. And I feel that we're still probably too much in that mind space, even though the world's moved on, and how women feel like they belong and want to be identified, and men and everyone in between.
I have a good anecdote for you from the classroom. I am teaching the MSc in marketing and also like an undergrad course on integrated marketing communication. And one of the tasks for the assignment was to develop a campaign. So again, between the crossroad between marketing communication, develop a campaign for a repositioning of a beauty brand. And it was fascinating how every single group decided to target female Gen Z. And I understand that most of them were coming also from knowing their experience. So the Gen Z part, I do get it. But nobody sort of picked up on the opportunity to work on gender fluidity or to kind of move past gender in a way when it came to segmentation and targeting, even if you could clearly tell that the students themselves, the way they were presenting and the kind of conversations we're having were not as rigid. But when it came down the assignment, they kind of went back to that kind of security. We need to define men and women.
Yeah, it's the muscle memory, isn't it? That's sort of, we were all pulled back into that. Yeah.
And at the same time, when you work with some case studies like recently, the Halo one from Sky Sports, right, which was a massive failure because it stereotyped its audience and sports fans and really looked into the worst way possible of targeting women. So there are students, and in general, the community is quite aware of the risks of misaligning. As you said, like making, if you want to make your audience seen, you need to kind of also listen to what they're up to and what are their concerns instead of like putting these stereotypes on and in a way not accounting for. And we talked about this before, but really all the different ways you can have to be a woman or to be a man, and everything in between.
Absolutely. I mean, that is a really, really good example, I suppose, or a bad example of the nuance. That wasn't nuanced at all. That was totally anything but nuanced. But that feeling of belonging, I mean, fundamentally, however you identify gender-wise, you're there because you enjoy sport. Sport belongs to you either as an observer or as a participant. It doesn't belong to a particular gender. And, the obvious comparable that I know was made at the time was between Nike. And although they're not always flawless, I think what they have done is they've rooted understanding with empathy in what they do. So they want to talk directly to to their audience. And if they happen to be talking to a woman, for example, they might zone in on, like any good brand would do. In the context of sport, maybe it's more around confidence or barriers to participation, but it doesn't. I think that was so interesting how that played out with Halo, because the difference, I suppose, to me, observing that as it played out, was almost like Halo have gone, well, this is your little corner of sport that you can sit in. Whereas, other brands would say you belong here and then would change their messaging depending on what part of the audience they're talking to. Because one thing they all have in common is, they're sports fans. And I just found that almost unbelievable that, any marketer could sort of, that maybe it's part of like, we see the world through our own lens, don't we?
Yeah. And you wonder, like, did they test it? I mean, did anyone, see it and had like some sort of like critical hat on, right? When you see these campaigns that are kind of really missing the point and almost like misinterpreting the lived experiences of people. Because I feel like when we speak about gender, and I did it myself like a few minutes ago, but it's almost like we need to think about, again, there are men, women, and gender fluid. But even when we reason within known genders, such as like, female or male, I think dealing with gender means dealing with breaking up the stereotypes around what does it mean to be a woman and what does it mean to be a man and what makes it masculine and what doesn't. So recently I was working on, I don't know if you remember, like the Lynx advert, where basically they portrayed all these new different masculinities, like who needs the moves when you get the nose,
Yeah.
and who need
Yeah.
it was a really a breakthrough campaign, I remember at the time, because it was sort of saying you don't need to be desirable if you have a six-pack. You can have all the amazing qualities you have as a human being, featuring some that had relations with ableism, with sexuality. So there was a really big span. It's interesting how Links in the meanwhile has moved past that again, and somehow, is one of the manifestation of gender that marketing has worked with, if that makes sense. So I think in this conversation between gender and marketing, is always very important to be aware. At least this is what I'm experiencing as a researcher, being aware of how brands are using this conversation. How do you feel like this whole thing translates into your work, like into your day-to-day work, since you work with SMEs maybe and not big brands?
I think so. My clients are professional services businesses, so law firms, accountancy firms, IT companies, advisory-led businesses, basically. And overall, the people who run those businesses are highly indexed males, and I think it's a funny one with when you're selling professional. So like my job obviously is to help them communicate the benefits of what they do to their audience. And so it doesn't come down to almost a obvious gender thing. It shows up in a lot more subtle ways, but a lot more subtle. So the images that, like I sort of sit in that interesting space between the theory and the strategy and the actual real world of trying to make it work and make it happen for my clients' businesses to really resonate with their audience. And it will, for me, it'll show up in subtle ways. So for example, if you're buying, if a business owner is wanting to sell the business and they're having to, they need to engage a corporate financer or an accountant, they're probably feeling quite insecure and they're probably feeling uncertain of what to do because they've never been through this process before. So how that they need to feel that my clients understand them. And I think there's another quite subtle but telling thing I've noticed is when people in general talk about business owners, they use he a lot. So, when he will, or he, to like the really can refer to the audience in a masculine way. Well, a woman who owns a manufacturing business is going to be very different to a woman who owns a well-being business, just like so again, I think we've got a long way to go still to even begin to properly, again, that muscle memory of breaking our own internal stereotypes that business owners are equally as much can be women as men, but also then moving that on to, well, all women business owners and all male business owners are all completely different anyway as well. So because there are some of their lived experiences, because they've come from different backgrounds, they're in different industries, different sectors, which have got different challenges. So I suppose what my observation is to really encourage my clients to challenge themselves to stop looking through their own lens on the world and really try and get much closer to their clients, like you said, speak to them, find out what's going on in their world, what is important to them, because when you can get to that point, that's when your audience are going to feel obviously understood, and then ultimately they'll trust you, won't they?
I think your experience is so relevant, because I really like what you said about sitting at the intersection between theory and practice and having to make it work, and also speak the language of your clients, right? It's fascinating. And just before coming here, I was sort of, kind of to warm up, I was reading this definition of gendered marketing, and how what we're looking into is how the market really shapes assumptions around gender roles, and how it can cast these assumptions over, again, gender, by limiting accessibility to the market.
Yeah.
Right. And the example that followed after was the one of the toy market, and how very much still in 2026 we have, dinosaurs and trucks and cars for boys, and everything is blue and everything is glittery and pink for girls, and how still difficult it is to see toys representing like STEM related topics for girls, for example, and how this is very much shaping how girls from the very beginning, or children from the very beginning, can imagine their future careers. So is a shaping activity, and very much it's interesting how you almost like get at a different point of this trajectory by looking at, what adult people, once they are in the market and they, they need to kind of figure out how to talk to potential audiences or how to position themselves, do face, the same constrictions in a way. Because I don't think it's necessarily ignorance. I think most of the time is just like constrictions.
I think it's just how we're all, like, we're all like a sort of, it's just conditioning, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which changes over time, thankfully. But it does make it very interesting when the world feels like it's moving very fast, and new norms are being created all the time. And for a marketer, then having, and for brands and for businesses to really, I would say, always just keep up to date, not with your own services and what you do or sell or make or buy, but what's happening with your audience. Because if you take your eye off that at any point, that can spell a dangerous trajectory for any business or brand. I'm always saying, when was the last time you spoke to your customers? How are they feeling? What are they doing? What's concerning them? Is it what you think is concerning them, or is it not? Because if you're off with that, then you're off. All of the decisions that come behind that are going to be off. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's interesting because when we think, I mean, I see it from a research perspective, but it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, which means is like society informing what brands do, or like, the sort of advertising communication, or is sometimes advertising communication pushing society forward by accepting certain representations, right? Drag queens in the Starbucks adverts, or on and on. So how much can we rely on brands and marketing to really make marketing more broadly to make a difference, and how much instead society should kind of like, well, it will go on its own, but at the same time shouldn't rely too much on marketing. And I'm thinking here about, what's going on in the United States, for example, and how all conversations on equality and diversity have been quite halted, and therefore also brands are quite careful, or a bit more careful, how they express themselves and the kind of politics they adopt. So to which point you can rely, on marketing to kind of push it forward. I mean, it's really a chicken and egg. No one has the answer. But it speaks a bit of what you said, keeping in touch with reality.
Yeah, it is. And like I say, reality seems to be, is it a benefit of being old? I don't know, but I didn't grow up in a hot social media age. So I feel like I can can see both the influences of how social, I mean, this is getting beyond gender, but how social media can be an echo chamber of the same thing over and over again, which for young people anyway, can be at a formative age when they're developing their whole sense of self. So it's it's about knowing who you. I would say from any brand or business's point of view, it's knowing what you stand for and what you want to be known for and how you want to help.
You said you have some interns, right, working at Agnes Marketing. Do you think that by being younger, they're a bit more tuned in on this conversation?
Oh my gosh, I learned so much from it. Oh my God, it's so, I just, they are, I absolutely love speaking to younger people, older people, because everyone has got such a different experience, grew up at a different period, so that's, I think, and again, I think I'm naturally curious anyway, and I like to talk. So the more you ask questions of people and ask about their experiences, the more you realise actually, we all need to ask more questions of each other about what is important to them from a consumer or a values perspective. Just this morning I was speaking to one of my colleagues and she was like how culture is so incredibly important to her. We were in a business, where she would choose to work. And my other colleague, who's a similar age to me, we were saying that never even occurred to us when we were 24. We just wanted to get a job,
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think there's something that comes up a lot in the university as well when we think about employability and how to look for internships. And it is quite high in conversations, like to be working in a place that reflects your values, and equality definitely is there for many of the students. It's almost like a given at this point in time, which I think many of them think of bigger companies and corporations, right? So I think that when you work at different scales, also like you encounter different cultures. I don't know. What is your experience of working in marketing as a woman?
That's a really interesting question, that. I've never been anything other than a woman, so it's hard for me to be able to compare whether or not my experiences would have been any different if I'd have been a man. I've definitely noticed a shift. The other interesting observation was when I first started working in the beauty sector, all of the like 95% of the biggest cosmetics company in the world was women, but the top positions were held by men, and that was so we're talking like 27 years ago then. So I think that has totally shifted now, certainly in terms of that in that business and in that company. But I do feel actually that women in general probably, in my experience anyway, seem to be really good marketers because they've got heightened sense of empathy and they're curious about other people and listen and form their judgments based on what they can see and what they hear rather than necessarily what they think. So that's why, it goes into why it's important in boardrooms that everyone is represented, because everyone brings a different perspective. And I think certainly women in marketing have a very powerful role to play in their ability to get into the sort of nuances of audiences. Obviously, there's incredibly talented men in marketing as well, but it's difficult for me to separate out being, a woman in marketing versus a man, because I don't know what my experience would have been like.
Well, I think that right now we tend to sort of think of gender as something that you do, right, rather than something you're born with. So is not that you're inherently woman in one way only, but like that way of being a woman is the result of all the experiences you've been through and the kind of social expectations you're going through and on and on. So I think that as much as the idea of genders might still, the labels might still apply forever and ever, what they mean might shift through time. So we'll find, that the idea of masculinity will be a bit more about listening and empathy and all of that, while women might achieve more than just like feeling empowered, which is a term I personally hate. And there is so much conversation in marketing around empowering, right? As if it was sort of given to you as sort of concession, right? Like you're getting empowered, and in fact, most of the time is slightly exploitative, right? Like this idea of, it's a whole different conversation. But yeah, so ideas of gender are changing as well, I think. And marketing is probably riding that wave, will need to ride that wave.
And I would just think, broadly speaking, in terms of gender marketing, going back to the Halo example, I would be asking, well, what is wrong with the core? What is wrong if you feel like you have to create something just for a gender? What's wrong? Why don't they feel they belong to the main stream of it anyway? And maybe, well, let's look at that first. Let's fix that first before we then try and just sort of lift something and put you in that corner over here.
No, it's a good one. So I'm pretty sure that those Sky Sports that were in charge of this are probably either been sacked or kind of learning something out of their experience. So what do you think are going to be the challenges, or like what are you looking to see in the near future in terms of gender in marketing from a practitioner perspective?
I think really for me, marketing's just about, it's part of the conversation, but it's if you're a sports fan, that's the main thing. The sport is what
Agreed.
is and really the gender is almost irrelevant, really, because what binds you is your passion for sport. So I think I'd hope that the future is more about making everybody feel part of whatever it is that unites them, and focusing on that, rather than trying to maybe use gender as a stereotype and a shortcut. So yeah, really being able to understand the difference between being gender aware and gender stereotypical, really, in decisions around certainly marketing and how we communicate with our audiences.
Yeah, I think from a research perspective that a lot of what we say around gender is very much based on Western literature, ideas of gender that have been developed either in the north of Europe or in the north of the US. And right now, there are the markets that are becoming way more relevant, right? Like if we think about the global market. And I think with the markets comes, yes, the economic power, but also maybe new ideas around gender as well. So this is probably something that we will need to account for. New, not new, but like other philosophical roots in a way to understand identity, and also different trends. You spoke about social media, we briefly touched on it, but definitely right now we still think very much from the perspective of Western brands, and I don't think this is going to be the case anymore.
Very good point.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Danielle. It's lovely to talk to you today.
That was the Management Matters podcast by the University of Liverpool Management School. Thanks again to our guests, Dr. Daniela Pirani and Lindsey Moore. You can find out more information about our research by visiting the Management School's website and connecting on social media. Thanks for listening.